Hey guys, in this week's episode, we're going to review Richard Jewell, but before that, we're going to talk about Season 1 finale of The Watchmen, possible series finale, and then rewatching The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens before the rise of Skywalker. Join us!
Join us?
Yeah.
I thought that was coming, and then I was like, oh no, maybe Mike fell asleep, and I got to...
No, I was like, surely they'll have some interesting banter, but you didn't. You let me down, so.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always is Make My Day Mike. How are you doing today, sir?
Well, I hope I've just made your day.
You have. Every day you make my day.
Thank you.
And also with us is Do You Feel Lucky Punk? Justin, how are you doing today?
I'm lucky. Punk.
But do you feel it?
No, but I am.
Perfect.
Is that possible? I don't know.
All right. Okay, well, if this is your first time joining us, normally we like to start off every episode in a section called News on the March. So if you haven't seen our feature review, you can keep listening. It's all time-stamped in the notes, and then you can just hop out before we get to the main review. Then we will be reviewing Richard Jewell. And in honor of Richard Jewell, I had a question for both you guys, Chris and Justin.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you when you first did the Macarena?
Oh, man. I know exactly where. That's so weird. So I guess I'll volunteer to go first.
Yeah. Sounds like that's...
While you guys search your memory. So I was in middle school gym class in the basketball court gymnasium. No, not middle school. What's it called between elementary and middle? Intermediate.
There you go.
4th through 6th grade.
Yeah.
In the gym during our dancing segment of that class, where we also learned to square dance.
Which one can you still do?
Oh, the Macarena. That one's easy to remember. Square dancing is I don't know, you hook elbows sometimes, you go around in circles. Although you do have somebody talking you through a square dance continuously. Yeah. But, I don't know. That's like doing two things at once, listening and dancing, and I can't do that very well.
Yeah.
But all right, where were you guys?
Oh man, I have no clue.
Have you ever done the Macarena?
Yeah, can you do it now?
I could do the Macarena now, but I wouldn't for the sake of everybody else.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Everyone else thanks you.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
Mike, where were you?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I remember the process of learning it, but I don't remember exactly where I was. I just remember it was everywhere, inescapably everywhere. And it's funny, it shows up pretty early on into Richard Jewell, and it was just whoa, blast from the past. I haven't thought about that in forever because I think we've all collectively stopped thinking about it.
As we should.
Yeah.
I film weddings, for anyone who doesn't know, and I've said it before on the podcast, but for new listeners, I film weddings professionally, and so I'm at a lot of weddings, and I have heard the Macarena played a few times, and people joining in. Yeah, people get on the dance floor and do the dance. So it's around.
Cringe.
If you know where to look.
I feel like you have to have enough alcohol to...
I was embarrassed in the movie when the scene was played.
I know.
I was like, oh, God, we did that, didn't we?
Yeah. This was a thing.
So here on the Casual Cinecast, when we're not doing the Macarena, what we like to do is talk about Criterion films.
That's the mission statement of our show.
Yeah. And the episodes are called Casually Criterion, which is clever, I think, myself. But what we really like to do is we each get to pick a film, and then we put it out to you guys to vote on social medias. So we have a big back catalog of films for you to go to check out. We have put it on hiatus until next year, which I think is a week away now, a week and a half.
2 weeks.
Not that long. The next episode we're going to do is going to be 12 Angry Men. So make sure you tune in for that. And Justin, how do they vote?
Well, the voting is done on Twitter, which you can follow us there at Casual Cinecast. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Casual Cinecast, where we do post about the polls and post the links to our Twitter polls. You can also find the poll link in the show notes of any Criterion episode where we choose our 3 movies that you get to vote on. You can also send questions about the movie we're reviewing each week to those social media accounts. You can also send those to casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you like the show and you want to help other people find the show, go onto iTunes, give us a 5-star review, tell us why you like the show, and it'll help other people find it.
All right, guys, are we ready to go ahead and move into news on the march?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
News on the march!
Yeah, so one of the things we've been doing, I watched Empire Strikes Back, and the other guys did a more in-depth rewatch of the Star Wars movies. Mike and Justin, what have you guys been watching over the last week or so? Star Wars, obviously, but what movies of Star Wars?
All of them for me.
Dang.
I am a completionist, so I did every rewatch, even the ones that I don't enjoy as much as the others.
So you included Solo and Rogue One?
I like Rogue One. I
Yeah.
did include Solo, even though between the standalone movies, that would be the one that I would not recommend watching if you don't want to watch the entire experience. You know,
Mm-hmm.
That's easily the one that's it's not the worst one, because I think Attack of the Clones is the worst one,
Yeah.
but it's the least necessary one, and by that I mean it's completely unnecessary.
Yeah. Attack of the Clones gets points for at least being part of the saga and having important events happen during it.
Yeah, it's required viewing.
Yeah.
So that one feels more like homework, whereas Solo feels like
Extra credit.
yeah, there you go.
Beautiful. That analogy
Yeah.
came together really well.
Yeah, it really did. Good job, Chris.
We should get together more often before the show and work these things out.
But no, I watched Rogue One, then I watched them all in chronological order because I've seen them all. So I just recently wrapped up The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, which
Nice.
will be primarily what we're going to be talking about today, because I believe Justin might also have watched something.
Yeah. Those are the 2 that I watched. So I didn't want to go back and rewatch everything. And if I had, I definitely would have skipped Solo and Rogue One too, even though I like Rogue One, but I just for time's sake, I would have watched like just the main saga. But I prioritized the 2 most recent films primarily for my fiance, because she claims to not be into Star Wars, even though she watched The Force Awakens in theaters when it came out and liked it. So I've been trying to get her on board with going to see Rise of the Skywalker with me when it comes out. So it's like, we at least have to watch the last 2. So we did watch Force Awakens and Last Jedi, both of which she really enjoyed and is super excited now about seeing Rise of the Skywalker. So mission accomplished.
Nice.
Good. It's
Another
also
convert.
just The Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, excuse me.
No problem. Just had to make that distinction.
Let me change it in the show notes where I wrote that. Oops.
One thing I think that struck me, I guess, whenever watching the entire saga this time, was that when it's all said and done, more than it's going to be about the Skywalkers, I guess it's probably Palpatine's story.
Yeah. I mean, he really feels important when you start bringing in the prequels.
Yeah, and seeing how they're like capping off the entire like saga by bringing him back, which I think is a smart way to cap off. If you're going to try to cap off the entire saga, I think that was probably the only way they could have done it.
Right.
Considering the only Skywalker left is not named Skywalker, and he's bad, and doesn't get as much screen time as the good guys, you know?
Yeah, unless we find out Palpatine is a Skywalker.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that's a sound of minds blowing.
Yeah, and people hating.
Yeah. Well, people are gonna hate it no matter what.
Yeah, it doesn't
Well, I
matter
know,
what happens.
but more people hating. I think
It's
if
already
that happened.
starting.
Yeah, more people than would otherwise.
Yeah.
But anyways, go on.
So yeah, I agree. I watched The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens most recently, and I also enjoyed them again. I'm excited to basically get into The Rise of Skywalker. I do have some problems with The Last Jedi, even though I think it's better than any of the prequels, and certainly better than The Force Awakens, in my opinion. But there is no such thing as a Star Wars movie without flaws, you know? I really still do not like Canto Bight.
Yeah.
Sure.
And everything Benicio del Toro does.
Yeah.
Those are fair complaints.
But I think those are my only major complaints. I don't know. Watching it again this time, were you struck by anything new, or do you pretty much feel this the same way?
Well, what really stuck out to me is that watching Force Awakens, and this is my first time to rewatch it since like the time that I watched it right before Last Jedi came out.
Oh, okay.
I remember having these issues with Last Jedi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though I thought, wow, this is even better than Force Awakens, I had issues. So, you know, obviously there are issues with Force Awakens. And rewatching it, I don't really have issues with that film that I can think of. Like everything makes sense. Everything. Okay, go ahead. What is your one?
It doesn't like the First Order. Like it seems like nothing has changed since the end of Return of the Jedi, which in subsequent other material is being fleshed out, like in TV shows like The Mandalorian and books and comics and stuff like that. But when we first saw The Force Awakens in theaters and we had nothing to go on other than what was on the screen, well, I guess there were some books, but I didn't partake in them. It just seems like the First Order is the exact same as the Empire, and we don't really have any time with the New Republic before it gets blown up completely.
Yeah.
So I feel like my only complaint in The Force Awakens, in an otherwise extremely watchable, well-paced movie, my only complaint is that like we could have used maybe like an extra scene or two, kind of like with a character catching someone up on what's been going on, you know, and who the First Order even are, and like that they're kind of like a fringe group. Because like what I didn't realize is that when I watched it the first time was that the First Order has been around for a while, but they're viewed more as like a terrorist organization,
right,
rather than like an official, any kind of governing entity.
Right. Well, I think that comes from the fact that we spend no time on the actual like Republic planet,
Except
like where the actual government is.
Not
Like, yeah, we see it right before it gets blown up of people coming out of like fancy buildings, right?
Mm-hmm.
The time we do spend with real quick, the time we do spend with the Resistance is like the small bases, the small groups, and so they feel smaller. So I mean, I think that's fair, a fair complaint, even though I don't necessarily feel it, because it also feels kind of like status quo for Star Wars, even though it probably shouldn't.
Well, apparently there was like decades of peace, you know, where Luke was able to set up a Jedi school. It's just we didn't get it right away, and we had to like find out about it through time. Like once you know the plot, like okay, yeah, they blew up the government, I get it. But like just the initial watch in theaters the first time, I remember thinking like, yeah, I wish I was getting a little bit more explanation. But
yeah,
upon rewatches, it bothers me less because I've had those gaps filled in other places. So I don't need the movies to give me that anymore.
Right. And what were you going to say, Chris?
Well, I was just going to say that there were scenes that were deleted that were on the planet, the Republic planet, that kind of fleshed it out a little bit more, but probably dragged the movie down a bit too much.
Probably. And that was kind of the point that I was going to make about what I really noticed is like how watchable and enjoyable Force Awakens is from start to finish. Like it's really not a very flawed movie in my opinion. Any flaws are minor, but The Last Jedi has some pretty big flaws in my opinion. But
yeah, but higher
they do so much interesting stuff in it and really take Star Wars like in a direction that I didn't really see coming, and just make a much more interesting Star Wars movie than Force Awakens, right? So it's flawed, but I do enjoy the film more overall, or at least like what it does for the Star Wars story. So I found that interesting to rewatch and notice that.
Yeah. Force Awakens feels so familiar, and you guys are talking about that. You could very easily, all you have to do is change the name from First Order to Empire, Rebels, New Republic to Rebels, and you have a Star Wars movie. They just have basically changed the names, and the whole idea, I think, of Force Awakens was that we are here and it's going to be familiar, right? And one of the things that I really like about what Rian Johnson did for Star Wars, and I think one of the things that really angered a bunch of people, or just made them dislike it. But like he really swung for the fences, and sometimes Canto Bight he missed, but sometimes like that hyperspace jump thing that they do to destroy the First Order ship into hyperspace. What was it called? Whatever maneuver that was really
it's
awesome.
Been dubbed the Holdo maneuver because
the
character Holdo is the one that
Laura
did
Dern,
it.
right?
Yeah, Laura Dern.
Yeah, so yeah, you guys are right. I just feel like The Force Awakens is good, but it's status quo, whereas Last Jedi swings for the fences and maybe misses, but also really goes a lot higher than anything in The Force Awakens.
Yeah, I call the Lightspeed move the Durninator.
The Durninator?
Feel the Dern.
It sounds like something you'd buy like at Burger King or something.
I have a question for you guys.
Yes.
So, Rey Nobody, do you think that that's going to be changed? Or not changed? That feels like very much like JJ like undoing what Ryan did. Let me put it to you this way. Do you think that she's going to be Rey Nobody by the end of it? Or do you think that JJ has, and there are plans for the character to be more than that? Or would you like that? I guess is my main question.
I think that she'll still be a nobody, but I wouldn't have a problem if they do, because what I did take away from Last Jedi is that I don't necessarily trust Kylo Ren enough for him to just be like, your parents are nobody, and just believe it.
Yeah, see, a lot of people are doubling down on that being the point of The Last Jedi, and I don't agree with that. I think it's very much the second part of a story, of a 3-act story. So
yeah, that point is predicated that Kylo... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just don't understand the intensity of the hate, because it's like people don't understand that the story is still ongoing.
Yeah, that point is predicated that Kylo Ren wouldn't lie, and I have no reason to believe that.
Well, and also, from what I gather in The Last Jedi, it seems like he only knows, and she only knows, they only know of each other what they can see into one another's minds, because they're their Force connection. Because remember in The Force Awakens, she's very much like, you're scared you won't be as strong as Darth Vader. And he's like, whoa, how'd you know that? So it seems like when I read that scene, it's very much Kylo reading Rey's own thoughts, like what she thinks truly, like deep down in her soul, and just pointing out the obvious to her that she's too scared to admit.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that he only knows what she knows, basically, like, and she doesn't know.
Right.
So
yeah, I agree.
So, I don't know. It feels very much like the story is still evolving. So, I feel like I've heard a lot of people say that, like, the point of The Last Jedi was very much like the fact that you don't need family lineage and bloodlines, and that's very much what Rian Johnson was saying. And I think that's a very... that's not what the movie is saying. That's always been the case. Rian Johnson didn't do that. The prequels were full of a bunch of people that weren't Skywalkers, using the Force. So... I feel like that's something that's like a misreading of The Last Jedi, is when I see people say that that's like the point. But anyway, Kathleen Kennedy has said, though, that this is the only thing that makes me believe that they're going to like continue on with the Rey thing is like that Kathleen Kennedy has said that this is the story of the Skywalkers. And I feel like unless Kylo Ren is a really major portion of the Rise of Skywalker, it's going to feel a little lopsided after that statement.
Yeah, well, the Skywalker lineage would end if Kylo dies and if Carrie Fisher dies, assuming that nobody else is a Skywalker we don't know about.
Right, yeah.
And then you could have Rey like kind of taking over there, and so the Skywalkers would be gone.
Yeah. Well, we'll see, and I look forward to seeing.
Yeah. So sorry, Chris, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think at one point I would have been really against them like switching her to a Skywalker. And really, I mainly that's because of the dialogue that went on around the Last Jedi.
Yeah,
but
it's hard to divorce yourself from that.
Yeah, it really is. And I think I'm okay with whatever, as long as it tells a good story, if that makes sense.
Well, I feel good. I mean, we've all said The Force Awakens is an extremely watchable movie, and I think J.J. Abrams has pretty good sensibilities for making an overall pleasing experience. Like, I don't think J.J. Abrams is going to put out a movie that he doesn't feel is going to be generally pretty pleasing. But my last question for you guys, before we move on to Watchmen, is what does Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, what does it need to do for you right now? Like, not knowing anything about it, not carrying any of the online baggage with you. Like, what needs to happen for you guys to walk away satisfied?
Well, I think I kind of said that, in a very opaque way. But, like a good story is what I need. But what I think I would like to see, and especially with Palpatine, if you're going to bring back Palpatine, I need like a really satisfying reason for that. I think, and something that's going to make everything click into place, maybe.
Yeah.
And especially maybe not for the whole trilogy. It doesn't necessarily need to do that, but at least for this trilogy, everything click into place, right?
Oh man, I won't say it here, but there is actually a trailer that was released a couple days ago on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a little minute-long teaser trailer. What it revealed in that teaser trailer made me really excited to recontextualize this trilogy. Like after this Rise of Skywalker comes out, I'm excited to go back and kind of rethink about things.
Awesome, yeah, that makes me excited too.
Yeah, but anyway, Justin, what about you?
I think recontextualization of things that we've seen would be good. That's something Last Jedi did, right? With Luke's thoughts on the Jedi and how they're kind of selfish and considering the Force to be for them or something. That makes me recontextualize things, especially the prequels. That's really interesting. So I would like a little bit more of that, and I think obviously it needs to be a good movie. That's goes without saying, and entertaining. But assuming that, the other thing I think I would like it to end in a way that allows me to continue on dreaming up where these characters go from the end of the movie, right? I don't necessarily want everything to feel so final and to where it's uninteresting to think about that. That was what was so fun about the original trilogy before the prequels, was all the books and what happens after Return of the Jedi. I want to still be able to have some of those and maybe feel a little bit more about the newer characters that I want to know more about what they're doing by the time this is all over.
Yeah, I think that's a major box on J.J. Abrams' list as well, because everything I've ever seen of him talking about this movie is him excited that basically the whole group is together. He wants it to feel very much like A New Hope. The group goes on an adventure together,
Mm-hmm.
Banter, jokes, action scenes that you have to survive through together. That kind of bonding, I think, and I think that will go a long way towards making us identify a little bit more with Finn and Rey and Poe, these characters that are all likable, but those actors are also charming. That I want to see them together having fun, so they can feel like their own little unit.
I agree.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we've pretty much talked all we can talk about a movie that hasn't come out yet, right?
Yeah, without getting into speculation, which isn't that fun.
Nah. Okay.
Just a few more days.
Yeah. What is it? It's Monday now. The Mandalorian comes out tomorrow night.
Oh,
they're moving it up. Yeah, they're moving it up.
Yeah.
To not compete with The Rise of Skywalker, but it's also gonna, at the end of the credits, have some sort of sneak peek or whatever at the movie, and then it will come out Thursday night.
A show that you can only watch streaming at home on TV is not going to compete with a theatrical movie release.
Especially when it's a half hour long.
Yeah, that is. I'm happy they moved it up because I can watch another episode sooner. Cool, but what a ridiculous.
Maybe look at it if you move the Mandalorian up, it's more of an advertisement. They're having the special. I remember a long time ago they did an Independence Day half-hour TV show before Independence Day came out. So I kind of look at it more that way.
Well, that's what it is. Why
it's
not
a
say
way
that?
to get all these people to watch a Rise of Skywalker sneak peek at the end of the episode.
Yeah. So why not say that? Don't say that. We don't want to compete.
Well, they didn't say that. That was my assumption.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Well, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought that was verbatim.
Maybe they did say it. I don't know. Who knows? Not me.
Okay. Cool. So Watchmen.
Let's do it.
Oh boy.
Okay, so I guess here's your warning. If you do not want to hear any spoilers about the entirety of season 1 / maybe the entire series of Watchmen, depending on if it gets renewed or not, then venture no further. There will be time-stamped notes in your app, so skip ahead to Richard Jewell if you do not want to hear any more about Watchmen.
All right.
You've come too far. You're in the danger zone now, so we're not responsible for anything you hear from here on out.
You're in the danger zone, Kenny Loggins.
Mm-hmm. Who wants to get us started? I
me.
vote Chris.
Yeah, I'm Chris.
As no surprise to anyone, I really like this episode. I thought it capped off a lot of stuff really well. It left some things unanswered. There's one thing that was left unanswered that kind of frustrates me to no end, and that is Condom Man, or the way he's been labeled on the internet is Lube Man. Like, that was certainly not wrapped up, and I have no idea what was going on with him. But there are a lot of things that are contextualized. I think this episode makes was it episode 7, the one with the memory pills, better? Like, at least for Justin, in the way that, like, you felt like
episode 6 was the one with the memory pills.
Okay, episode 6. But the way you felt like it was spinning its wheels, you have to have that story in here for the Cyclops and stuff like that. I thought Regina King was really good in this. There is a Senator Keene evil Bond speech, like where he kind of just tells everybody what he's doing. Mm-hmm. I think I read or talked, or not, I didn't talk, but like I read or heard somewhere when Adrian Veidt in the comic is giving his speech, like his evil Bond speech, they're like, well, how are we going to stop you? And he's like, I've already done it. Like, he gives a speech after he's done it, which I think is interesting because Adrian Veidt's the smartest man in the world, and obviously Senator Keene is not that smart, so he tells everybody before he does it what he's going to do. So I think there are interesting things in there. I think as a whole, like, this whole season might be something like The Last Jedi. Like, it swung for the fences, and first of all, it took an IP which we don't see very often, not particularly the Watchmen IP in itself, but any IP, and played around with it and messed around with it and changed it, and while I think, like, honoring the original spirit. And I think that that's really interesting and really clever. And most of the time when you take an IP like this, it's so precious, and you can't mess around with it. We've seen so many, like, reboots and like remakes of these IPs, like, that are boring, and I think that this is anything but boring. So yeah, that is just some of my thoughts on The Watchmen. Who would like to go next?
I think the finale is fine. It does what a lot of finales can't do, which is wrap things up, answer a lot of questions, in a mostly satisfying way. That said, I felt nothing. Like, nothing emotionally resonated with me. And so it was a fun puzzle. But I feel like the season and series as a whole so far is more concerned about being a puzzle than it is with like having me relate to any characters or care about their fates or invested exactly. Like, the only investment I have from week to week is entirely, like, academic. Like, oh, what is the plot? What is the mystery? What are these, like, the bits of world building they're putting out? But, all of them could have gotten shot in the head at the end, and I think it would have been, like, not a sad ending.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Going off of what Chris said, do you think or feel that that is in keeping with the spirit of the graphic novel?
I mean, I cared about the characters in the novel a little bit more. Like, I'll give you an example. Dr. Manhattan. It's not a character that you're supposed to necessarily care about because he's so obtuse and so godlike, and so detached. Mm-hmm. But I was still interested in him. Like, his entire arc in the book is him growing disgust with humanity and drifting further apart. Maybe if I didn't care about him, I at least found that to be fascinating and interesting, and they did the groundwork there. Here, For example, take the same character, Dr. Manhattan. I have no idea what he's thinking. They completely disregarded his comic book arc, and they needed him to be hidden for 8 episodes, so they came up with a reason for him to be hidden. Not because we learned anything new about him, or not because he changed in any way. It's literally just like the show's like, now what happens, though, if he just changed his mind?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not explored. Like, oh yeah, he got bored of being a god. But, like, that's weak, in my opinion. Like, that's not satisfying. Show me and don't explain at me. More character work, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Same goes with Lori. I liked her in the book, in the novel. I liked her in the Zack Snyder movie. I cared about her journey, finding human connection. Now she's just mean. I don't even know what her arc is in this season. Like, she arrests Adrian Veidt at the end. That's not super satisfying to me.
Yeah, it's something she probably might have done in the graphic novel if she had the option, but she didn't have the option. So that's in itself isn't necessarily a character arc, in my opinion. Right.
It's not. It's like I don't know what I'm supposed to take from her character. Like, what is she doing? What is she thinking now? Like, I get it. She's cynical, but like, I want a trajectory, and I feel like a lot of characters, while still being a good episode, I feel like a lot of characters, like, they weren't focused on. It was just like, they were so proud of the twists and the mystery and all the twists and turns that they didn't really land any emotional impact for me. So that's where I'm at. Overall, I think the season's worth it. I think it's a good season of TV. It's certainly unique and original. I don't think it captures the original spirit of The Watchmen as much as I would have liked it to. And it has a lot of the problems I personally had with Lost. But overall, it's still a good show, and I definitely recommend giving it a shot. It's very watchable, especially now that you can binge it.
Yeah, actually, well, before we hear Justin, but like I did want to say I am intrigued about going and revisiting everything with the knowledge of the ending in place and see how that changes how I watch it, or like what I see when I watch it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm hoping I'll get some character stuff and some character motivations fleshed out to make me care about the central relationship a little bit more, or just get a little bit more there. I just feel like it's all too sparse for the sake of mystery. So, yeah. What do you think, Justin?
Well, I'm not so far off from you, Mike, and I'm pretty darn far off from Chris. Because
that surprises me.
These last couple episodes have really 180'd me on the show. Like, I don't dislike it as a whole, because it is interesting while watching it a first time to like think about how this is changing stuff from the graphic novel, or how this has evolved from the graphic novel to this point, and where is it going to go? And ultimately, I find where it went dissatisfying. A lot for the reason that you're saying, Mike, is that the show ended up being more concerned with its puzzle and its mystery and tying all of that up. Like, if the big complaint that I hear about the ending of Lost all the time is that it let go of the mystery and the plot and answering questions in favor of wrapping up the characters' arcs and the emotions and themes of the show, well, the Watchmen to me has the opposite problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, because I also felt nothing during it other than like, oh, okay, that's what that was, and that's what she was up to, or he was up to, and this is why this happened. Like the watch battery thing. Like, oh, that's where the watch batteries came from, and that was like,
which that can be satisfying.
It can be,
not emotionally. Yeah,
and what really I think turned me off by this final episode, and again, I just recontextualize the whole show. Like, as a whole, is an interesting journey, but this last episode was my least favorite because I think by this episode, what we really got was something that felt a lot more like a standard comic book or comic book movie, like final act, where we get good guys, we get bad guys, and there's a clear bad guy, and the good guys, everything seems hopeless, and they suddenly, through like some mistake, get like this chance to fix everything and save the day, and they do. And that to me, for Watchmen, compared to what the graphic novel was, is just boring.
Right. Well, okay, so there's a thing, and this is how I was thinking about it too, because I kind of expected a Watchmen graphic novel like ending. And then I also was like thinking about the Adrian Veidt, and how they arrest him. Like,
I really didn't like that.
Well, I find that a TV show that's so focused on legacy and about things that people have done in the past or things that have happened in the past, and holding him responsible for what he's done, these mistakes that he made, 20, 30 years in the past, I find interesting. And it actually may be satisfying for Adrian Veidt, because finally now he can make his case as to why he deserves all of the credit for what he did, right? And that it was actually a good thing. So that actually would be an interesting thing for me, like if they ever get to a second season or if they decide to do that. But that's why that feels okay to me in a movie and TV show, not a movie, but a TV show that's so focused on legacy and about crimes that have happened in the past. I found that interesting and satisfying.
Well, I mean, there's a version of that could be good. Like, but I don't think the version we see on screen is the most interesting version of Laurie arresting Ozymandias.
Yeah, if he wanted it because he was tired of not getting recognition, that would be cool. But he was like fighting against it.
Yeah, or even if there was any kind of character, like dynamic in their conversation that like would make that scene pay off more. But it's literally like, all right, we did it. Everything's happy. Here's your ship. You can go home. You remember that guy? I saved him. And then she's like, you're under arrest, Ozymandias, or whatever. And he's like, what? And then it's like, boom, that guy talks too much. And it's like, what is this?
Well,
like,
I mean, it's understandable. I mean, like, I enjoyed that scene. I didn't have a problem with it as much as I guess you guys did.
I think the problem with that scene is just how underwhelming it is. Yeah. And that's maybe part of the joke. But if you think about just like the sort of, for a lack of a better word, like epicness and awesomeness of the ending of the graphic novel, where the good guys finally figure everything out, they show up, but everything's inevitable because the plan's already in motion. And what he's doing falls into a gray area, right? Like, he's not wrong. It's just evil. And he even convinces in the graphic novel some of the good guys that he's right. And he pulls them to his side. And like, so just to have that like philosophical idea into the novel and it to just totally go on its head. Like, I don't want that exact same type of ending where like something is inevitable and the plan goes through and the bad, like the evil prevails or whatever, but just something approaching that level of like, wow. Thought. And like leaving me with something to think about or something to, really just like punch me in the gut at the end. It was really missing for me. And what I will say is that I will feel better about this season if I find out that a second season is coming, or they do 2 or 3 seasons and this is just part of the story and we're going somewhere else. I think I can make peace with that. But if this is the end, I don't like it.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that like Ozymandias was like in the statue the whole time, that Veidt had been there like the whole time on Earth, like in the golden statue. Mm-hmm. I think that was like a cool reveal, but the entire dynamic between Veidt and Lady True, like they don't meet really until this episode. And then we get like everything all at once, and I hate to keep banging this drum, but I felt the same thing in this episode that I felt with the museum and the nostalgia pills, with the housekeeper just knowing his password and then conveniently he just keeps samples upon samples upon samples of his own semen in his office.
Yeah, at least
it feels like that only exists because we need a villain in Lady True. So they're like, how can we get a villain? It needs to be the smartest person in the world. It needs to be his daughter, but how could that happen? Oh, I know. We'll just create this thing where he keeps his own semen in a portrait behind his desk.
I mean, I don't think it's anything this show's crazy and has wacky things going on in it, and I don't.
Yeah, but that's always the excuse.
Well, I mean, I think that there's other things. I don't have a problem with it. It is wacky and it's weird, but I also think
convenient. That's what it is. Everything is so convenient.
Yeah, that's super convenient. That's something I want out of a second season, is because I think it really bothers me that I don't understand why she's doing that, impregnating herself.
Death to the imperialists or whatever.
Well, she's like, I think if she was like, oh, this guy's the smartest man in the world, and I want his semen to be, part of my baby so that it'll be real smart and successful. Like, I understand that, but she seems to have some sort of like, vindictive reason for doing it, because she's like, fuck you, Ozymandias.
Well, that's because it's about the puzzle and not about the characters. There's no character reason for her to do it. They just needed a villain. They don't want to spend the time.
They talk about it on the podcast? Is that what you're going to say?
No, I was going to say, they talked about it in the show, right? Like, she was a house cleaner that he ignored, and obviously she's very smart, and so that's why she's like, fuck you, like, I could have done more for you or whatever, and
could have done more for him. What are you talking about?
What? Like, she could have been more than just like a house cleaner that he ignored,
But he how did he ignore it? Because when he saw her as like a girl, he recognized her, and she was like a Vietnamese refugee or something.
Well, I mean, he was going to kill all those people anyway. Like, if she would have lived, she would have died. So he didn't care about her regardless. But I would have liked some character moment. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I want a character moment where she puts it all together and we realize that she's smart. Because right now, the only thing that leads us to believe that she's smart is that she left before everyone got murdered.
Well, she also cracked his code and stuff like that. She knew where everything was.
But all I'm saying is that character is so half-assed. It's just about the puzzle reveal. Yeah. It's not about any kind of emotional thing. Like, we didn't learn any greater truth by learning like Lady True's origins. Like, there's no Veidt didn't even care. It's brushed off in dialogue really quickly, and we just move on to the next thing because this episode's so full of like things they got to wrap up, and I don't know. So I just stress the fact no emotional resonance for anything. It's just interesting mysteries being resolved. That like any of these things could have been like 50 times better with just more character work in between all this stuff. In my opinion,
it feels to me like the only thing that we get out of her being his daughter is the fake out that the moon says, help me D, is always, or save me D. And we think, oh, it's Dr. Manhattan he's calling for with that D, because who else could it be? And then we get like, oh, nope, it was daughter. But why? You know what I mean? What?
Yeah, he just turns around and kills her.
Yeah. What greater thing does that really do? What do we get out of their story and Lady True that we couldn't get if she was just a smart person? Like, why can't she just be a smart person?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It just feels like a puzzle reveal, and like they needed a cool like origin thing for the villain, so they came up with the semen portrait.
Well, yeah, they needed something to throw everyone off the scent of like, and fake everyone out and think that he was calling for Dr. Manhattan's help, and not. Yeah. And this gave him something that started with a D.
Yeah,
which is frustrating, but whatever.
Also, I felt like the squids were a little inconsistent with how much damage they could do to things. Like, they can go through Lady True's hand, but it can't crack a phone booth.
Well, that was the thing that I was mentioning earlier on. That was kind of wacky, where it didn't necessarily make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it wasn't like...
Oh, sorry.
It just ultimately wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, so the only other thing I felt was kind of like a missed opportunity at the end was Will Reeves. He is so central to the first half of this, all the way up to episode 6 even. And then he seems like kind of an afterthought. Like, he gets family at the end with Angela, and I thought that was sweet. I liked that. I like that he's going home, and he'll likely move in with her, you know. I did enjoy that, but I would have liked a little bit more Will Reeves' point of view during all of this, because he was played up to be so important. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I didn't get a lot from Angela in his like last scene in the church or the movie theater. I mean, did you guys get anything from that scene at all, or like, am I missing something?
Just quickly, I'll agree with you that I didn't get anything from it, but also now that the season is over, I've been kind of waiting and seeing where her character goes. But like, I don't like her character. I don't like Angela. I don't care about her.
You don't like Angela
I
at
don't
all?
Find her interesting. No.
Yeah.
Regina King is fine, but I think her character is written in a way that just rubs me wrong. You know,
she drops a lot of unnecessary F-bombs.
She says fuck so much, and it annoys me 90% of the time because it seems so written. Maybe that's peppering what I think of her character, but just like in general, I don't connect with it and feel nothing for it. So like, I felt nothing at the end too. But so I'm with you. But Chris, if you've got other thoughts, I want to hear them.
Oh yeah, I mean, I found that was my favorite part of the episode, was the last the talk with the grandpa. I think I can kind of understand what you're talking about, because I think there are a lot of characters. This is a season full of what I would almost call like short stories, because we got the short story about Will Reeves, and Angela's like flashback with the pills. We got a short story about Laurie's character, or at least from her point of view. We get the point of view from the Looking Glass, so there's a lot of like short things. I would have loved more of Looking Glass too, and just in general, but I think it being a 9 episode series or 9 episode season / series, whatever it is ends up being, but that I got enough from those episodes for those characters. I enjoyed the talk about why they wear masks, and I found that interesting. But yeah, so I enjoyed that. Yeah.
What I will say, the one thing that I did pull away from the show, that made me think a little bit differently, or not think about differently, but just like here put in a way and seen in like a metaphorical way, is the whole idea of the line that just says, well, masks make people mean. And I think how that applies today to me is just this idea of the internet and how negative and mean it can be when like our mask is our social media profile, right? Or the character person we are when we tweet or whatever. And that's like a mask, right? And
for sure,
applying it in that way and thinking about it, like I'm like, okay, great. So I will say that I liked that line.
I mean, the masks at least were meant, like, why do we wear masks? Like, whether it's on the internet or, the KKK, and there's all sorts of examples of wearing masks. But like, and then I liked, why do you put that on? Because you're scared, or it's not because you're angry, it's because you're scared and hurt. And that's why you go on the internet and post crazy stuff, not because you're angry necessarily, but you're scared and afraid, or I guess it was the same word, but scared and hurt, and I found that interesting. I thought it's really too bad. And I don't, like, everybody has their own experience, and I don't want to but like, man, I think there's so much in here, but
well, that I agree. So here's what I'll say. Like, I've sounded pretty negative, probably more than anyone this whole season, but coming away from it, I think I'm overall more positive than Justin, possibly. But here's the thing is, like, I get so disappointed in the lack of, or like when I see the seams, is because like the show does put so much in there, and there's so much to like, and there's so much to admire, and I like what it's doing, like 80 to 90% of the time,
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes me so bummed out every week. It seems like whenever there's just like something that keeps like I don't even want to say suspending disbelief, but like it keeps actively taking me out of the show because I'm thinking about them writing the show.
Yeah, and that's fine.
But like it's just like the ideas, like the masks idea, like that's good. There's a lot of good there. There's a lot of brilliant things they're trying to say in here, but none of it means anything if I don't connect with these people. Like, I have to care about them. I have to care if they live or die, or I have to care about their relationships if they break up, or something. Like, I have to care to them to some degree. But like, I mean, even when John Dr. Manhattan was actually like dying, he's getting murdered, and I liked that character in the graphic novel. I don't expect to get sad because I'm not like emotionally invested in Dr. Manhattan, but I was at least like present throughout his whole arc, And here he's like an afterthought. It's like he's just a MacGuffin.
Yeah, it doesn't even feel like they bothered to make sure they had a really great, compelling actor to portray Dr. Manhattan either.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like that's how little they cared about that character.
I mean, I disagree with that. I think he was good, even when he wasn't Cal. Like, and like when before we knew he was Dr. Manhattan, I was like, man, that's really weird. This guy's kind of just on the periphery, and I was like, he's got to have more to do, you know. But like, yeah, I thought I enjoyed that. I mean, I think we're just on opposite ends here, you know, like, so I don't think there's any compromise here.
I'll compromise if this isn't the end of the story.
Yeah.
I'll be back in the, like, maybe this is going somewhere and there's a reason that we get so little so far.
Yeah. I agree with that.
I have one more thought.
Okay.
So we did this like sort of experiment where we're going to talk about each episode week to week in spoilers and kind of dissect it and think about it. And I think it's been fun. But what I have to say, I do feel that my experience of the show was lessened by the things that I found out, because like personally, I stay off of like Reddit that talks about anything that I'm curious about, or like internet for any shows like this. And like I turn the episodes off before like they do their next week on Watchmen, right? Like I don't even watch those because I don't want to know anything that's coming, right? And we do talk about on here like the speculation that we get from Reddit and from the internet, and it's so vast, and like the internet is like collectively is so powerful that they really figure out this stuff, and it turns out to be real accurate. A lot of the speculation and theories that rise to the top of Reddit, that like it really spoiled some like things from the show. I think like there were so many things that I think were supposed to be surprises that weren't surprising because I just saw it coming once we talked about it on the show.
Yeah, maybe there's something to that, I think, because, you know, maybe that's why I couldn't connect with it, is because the stuff that like a lot of people are connecting with like wasn't a surprise. You know what I mean? Like Hooded Justice being a black man, being Will Reeves, that was like something we talked about at episode 1, I think.
Yeah.
So it's like, even the things that were supposed to be like, whoa, awesome. Like I didn't get that like that high of like the reveal, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of it. So maybe there's something to that. Like maybe if you don't spend all your time thinking about it and speculating about it, then, or maybe some of that stuff will land better for you. Yeah, maybe.
Right. And even like the senator being behind his funeral thing was something that was speculated on here, and Dr. Manhattan being on Earth or whatever, and Ozymandias, Adrian Veidt being on Jupiter and figuring out what he was doing. Like, I don't know. It just seemed like there was too much accurate speculation to that kind of ruin it. I don't know. Not that I didn't enjoy talking about it with you guys. Like, I'm not trying to say like we should never do this again.
Right.
I'm just curious if you guys felt any of that.
Maybe. I mean, I didn't consciously feel it, but I'm thinking now that maybe some of like, I might have enjoyed it more had I not talked about some of the twists and turns. So that way, you know, if it's not going to like spend time with character, then I at least want the reveals to be cool for me, you know?
Yeah. Like that's so much of the show in the end that, it's important.
That makes sense. I get it.
Yeah. Okay. That was my last thought on Watchmen.
All right. So I guess with that, if anyone is still listening, thank you. Our apologies if Watchmen is your favorite show. Please don't hate on Justin and I. But if you disagree with us, if you could, Chris is probably going to edit that conversation out. But you, listener, if you can tell me why Angela loves Dr. Manhattan, like from a character reason, like the moment she fell in love and why, I'd be interested to know that.
For sure.
Anyway,
that's a good starting point and a big gap in the show.
Yeah.
But we don't have to talk about it because we're moving on. Yes,
we are. And with that, we're moving in to our review of Richard Jewell.
Richard, you're a national hero now.
Thank you, sir. But I was just doing my job.
Move away from the tower!
You always look at the guy who found the bomb just like you always look at the guy who found the body.
Jewell fits the profile of the lone bomber.
A frustrated white man who is a police wannabe who seeks to become a hero.
We're running it.
You're a suspect. You don't talk.
I talk. Say it.
I don't talk.
This might be the only way to clear your name.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
Did he do it?
Richard Jewell is an innocent man. He's a hero.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
One more time, just a little louder.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
You set that bomb.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
I don't know how to protect you.
I think your client is guilty as hell.
They want to fry you.
You ready to start fighting back?
As usual with our theatrical movies, newer movies, we will be doing a spoiler-free section first where we'll give general thoughts. We won't give any major details about the movie, although with this particular movie, it's a true story. So if you're familiar at all with that story, you know what happens in the movie. But before we start giving spoilers, and for those who don't know what happens, then we will give you a spoiler alert, and there will be a bumper, so you have plenty of time to pause the podcast, go see Richard Jewell, come back and finish listening. Or decide that you're just completely out on Richard Jewell and don't ever want to see it. And then I guess you don't have to come back.
But we hope you do.
Yeah.
Come back. I don't care if you see the movie.
Yeah.
Richard Jewell was directed by Clint Eastwood. It stars Paul Walter Hauser, Sam Rockwell, Kathy Bates, John Hamm, and Olivia Wilde. The IMDb synopsis says, American security guard Richard Jewell saves thousands of lives from an exploding bomb at the 1996 Olympics, but is vilified by journalists and the press who falsely reported that he was a terrorist.
This is one sentence, as we've been known to applaud, but do you hate this synopsis, Mike? Hate may be a strong word.
Yeah, I was like, I don't hate it.
I feel like it's inaccurate.
Yeah, it doesn't set my world on fire, but I don't hate it.
Yeah. It's kind of spoilery, and it
I
feels
mean, I guess,
more
but
life
also,
event.
Yeah, it's a real life event. That's why we're all watching the movie.
Fair enough.
It's like being like, spoiler, Steve Jobs invented Apple. God, why'd they give that away?
Yeah. Ted Bundy got caught? Dang.
Yeah. So let me start by saying I think that this is an okay movie about a really sad situation with a really great performance at the center of it. Basically, the heart and soul of this movie, I think, rests with Paul Walter Hauser, who I think is really watchable here. I think when he's on screen, I'm compelled and I feel for him, and I cannot wait to see what he does next. However, some of the side characters in this movie feel a little bit more cartoonish, in my opinion, than the central drama with the family, which sort of brought my mood down while watching it. You know, I think there are some pretty standard Hollywood, biopic mistakes made with some of the side characters. That said, I still think Hauser and Rockwell carry the movie and make it worth seeing, but I probably won't ever see it again, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Makes more sense than you know.
Okay, well, Chris, what is your thought process on Richard Jewell?
My first thought after hearing what you said is relief, because I'm 100% on board with what you just said.
Oh, good. We are going to agree tonight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah. The thing that makes this movie worthwhile, if it is worthwhile, is the performances. The performances are really great in this, and I think that that's what makes this movie as good as it is. There's very little else that really sells this movie to me. After having watched it, I don't know how much to get into because it's a real life event and spoilers and stuff like that. But there is a feeling that I kind of got from this, like the Trump fake news. Like this movie had its sights locked on the media, and also, and I guess the FBI too. But those characters that would have made this movie a lot more interesting if those characters had been more realistic and more accurate, I think. And I don't know the real story that closely, but just if they had been people. I read somewhere that the lady that is portrayed by Olivia Wilde is suing liable for this movie.
I think
or
she's dead.
Whatever studio.
It's I think it's the paper.
The paper is suing her, but the lady's dead?
Yeah, like the what is her name? Kathy Scruggs. Yeah, she died like 5 years after the events of this movie.
So someone's
from
suing
drug
them.
overdose.
Oh, geez. Well,
it's from what I said is the paper. They came out and were like,
okay.
"Oh, you know, she was ethical and didn't do the stuff that was portrayed in the movie."
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of see that. You know, like
it felt cartoonish to me. That's the word I used earlier.
Cartoonish is definitely right, and in that way, it makes me feel weird, and especially when we have a character like Richard Jewell, who has done a lot of crappy stuff. Is everything about cops that I hate, you know? Does that make sense? He's a nice guy. He's a genuine nice guy outside of being a cop, right? But when he is a cop or has power, I don't know that I like him very much. You know, like I don't know that he's that good of a guy, you know? So yeah, we'll leave off on that. I think this is like a 2.5 to 3 star movie for me. And only because of the performances. Justin, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm not that far off from you guys. I think I'm a little bit more confident on the fact that I think it's a good movie. Like,
yeah, I'm sitting comfortably at 3. There's no 2.5 sneaking in there for me.
Yeah, I'm at 3.5. I'm not edging towards 4, but I might be slipping a little more towards 3 if anything. But I am at like a 3.5 because, I mean, I think they're, as you guys have said, Sam Rockwell and Paul
Walter
three
Hauser.
name guy, Paul Walter Hauser,
Triple Paul,
PWH. They're both really good in this, and I don't know that they'll get any, you know, Oscar noms or anything like that, just because they're more interesting films.
I think he should get an Oscar nom. I think he should.
I wouldn't be upset. I just don't know that people will care enough about this film.
Yeah, yeah.
to nominate him.
Agreed. Sam Rockwell was really good too. I'm glad that you guys responded to Sam Rockwell's performance. I really liked it too, but great. I wasn't sure if you guys were going to be digging on it. Yeah. I think Sam Rockwell is great in this movie.
I totally agree, and I do think that the story itself that we get, to me, it's extremely compelling, and like on just a really base level. So I was just enthralled in the film like the whole time. Because it's well made, and as we said, it's well acted. It's made in a very straightforward way, which I think serves the story well, but also, as Clint Eastwood's movies tend to do, with, you know, some exceptions, they tend to be good movies, and we watch them and we enjoy them, and then in 5 years, sometimes less, they're just out of the conversation on movies, and I think that this one probably won't be any different.
I do think it's one of Clint Eastwood's better movies in the past couple decades, though.
Yeah, I agree.
Out of the ones I've seen, for sure, yeah.
I agree. I think it's less interesting in some ways, that, like, at least in like things to think about after the movie's over, than some of his films, even though they were lesser films. Like, I found myself a little bit more personally moved and deep in thought more so after like Hereafter, which isn't a great movie.
Yeah. You know, actually, I liked Hereafter.
I liked it too, and this is probably a more engaging, enthralling movie that's maybe baseline more good or better or whatever. But this Hereafter like left me thinking.
Yeah, I agree. But as far as his other movies goes, like this beats Gran Torino in my opinion, or like Changeling, or what's the movie came out with last year?
The Mule.
The Mule, yeah. Like, see, these movies never sound terrible to me, but I think it's just like, of his directorial work ever since the 90s ended, I think I've just been personally invested less and less in like his directorial movies, but that's because he's been doing like sometimes 2 a year. Like,
yeah.
So, I mean, when you make that many movies, a lot of them are bound to be meh. you know?
Yeah, and I think this film and like this genre of film already has a mountain on its own to like overcome of being a movie that stays with us. Because, I mean, I think if you look at what I think is a better film in Spotlight, it won Best Picture, but still not that many people really talk about it.
Oh, I love that movie though. Spotlight's so good.
It'll stay around because it won Best Picture, and it'll always be brought.
We'll always
because
have
of
to
that.
bring it up every now and then.
If you just look at Best Pictures and you'll think about Spotlight. But if it hadn't, as good of a movie as it is, I don't know that it'd be talked about. But like a lesser movie, The Post last year, no one's talking about, or another film from like the same lady who wrote the article that this movie is based on about Richard Jewell. She wrote the article that inspired the movie The Insider, which is a great movie, very similar type of film, and like that movie's great, and it's not talked about. Like nobody really.
Oh man,
talks
I think
about
about that movie all the time. Insider. I think I talk to people about it, and like I don't know why exactly, but it comes up. But
it might come. I guess like I don't see The Insider or any movie. Very many movies in this genre come up in like a, you know, what are the best films of the 90s or the 2000s or whatever. Like they just don't get mentioned, and it's all the Indiana Jones or the you know, Titanic or, you know, Christopher Nolan films and stuff that get it. So this movie is basically fighting an uphill battle, and it's got Clint Eastwood, which I
thought it won.
Go ahead.
I do think $1 Million Baby gets talked about.
Yeah.
Or at least it did for a while.
I think it does.
I think of any of Clint Eastwood's directorial movies of the 2000s onward, I think $1 Million Baby and Richard Jewell are probably the ones, maybe not Richard Jewell, but I think those would be the ones that might be remembered the most. It certainly won't be like the 1517 to Paris or whatever the hell that
sure
movie is.
Yeah, I mean, I am in on like the overall message of this movie. Like that, I think if you can't look past Clint Eastwood's personal politics, this might feel very, you know, one-sided and like a bit of a propaganda machine for messages from one side of like the political spectrum. But it is a message that I think can transcend both sides if you let that go.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have felt better about that message if like Olivia Wilde and James or not, what is his name?
John Hamm.
Yeah, if Olivia Wilde and John Hamm hadn't been quite, you know, like Mike was saying, as cartoonish as they are. Like if they had been real people and given like real reasons for doing what they were doing, I could have backed it better. Like if it had been a cautionary tale as to why not to do this, you know, from their perspective, or not, maybe not from their perspective, but like if I had been given a little bit more from them, I could get behind the movie a lot quicker.
I will say, I agree with you. We'll talk more about it in spoilers, but I will say I think John Hamm and Olivia Wilde's characters are both equally written cartoonishly. Like they're both the same on paper, but I felt it significantly less in John Hamm's scenes.
I
think John Hamm's a better actor, in my opinion, than Olivia Wilde is, or at least in this particular movie. Because Olivia Wilde was like, she's moving a lot, like she's moving her head around a lot in this performance, and she's yelling a lot at everybody. Like she's always like,
this lady,
feeling her boobs and stuff, and like it's just like really like, over the top performance, in my opinion.
Using her sexuality to get the stories.
Yeah,
right?
but like in a really over the top way that like her physicality in the performance even I think is like she's in a different movie than everyone else, in my opinion.
Yeah, she's also playing a character that died of a drug overdose, so I don't know if that played into her decisions, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of it, is they've discovered, you know, this lady
but
was a drug addict and like...
Right, but wouldn't that be a better scene in a movie? Like if we had spent any amount of time with Olivia Wilde's... Well, we can get more into it in spoilers, but if we had spent any amount of time with nuance, I guess, is the best way to describe it. Because it seems like we only have like X amount of minutes with this character, so they got to like make every scene she's in like the most obvious to the point thing they could do.
Sure. Well, on a positive note, while we're here, is that this movie is obviously, there's a bomb that goes off, and I just like bomb scenes stress me out. I don't know about you guys, but like I don't know if it's just that, like how it affects me personally, or if the whole segment where they're, discovering the bomb and at the concert park where the bomb goes off, like, seemed to be really well done to me because I was just in suspense and just dreading it.
Yeah.
That
whole sequence was really, really good.
I jumped when the bomb went off for sure.
Oh my gosh, so did I.
Oh man, I actually did too, because like I actually laughed right before it too, because like he's actually like, in the process trying to get everyone to move away, and he goes up to the couple and they're like kissing, and he's like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I actually laughed out loud at that point, and then the bomb went off, and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
but like I audibly like laughed out loud when he's like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
Like, it made
Same
me
way.
laugh.
I was waiting for that line to pop back up later in the movie when we like see a flashback.
Me too. I was like, "Oh, sweet."
I want to hear that line again because it was funny.
But in slow motion.
Yeah. The thing that I thought about was I kept thinking to myself, like, can I like real sneaky pull out my phone and Google like what song was being performed at the exact time the bomb went off so that I know when this thing's going to go off and I don't have to be and like, so I can kind of just relax in my seat.
Do you think it's that accurate?
I don't know. I thought maybe they would take the time to be that accurate and I could look it up. Like, oh, it went off during the chorus of whatever person was singing this song, and I could like listen and be like, okay, it's about to happen. Because I don't really know very much. So like even when Kenny Rogers was playing, like the first night there, I was like, oh my! Even from like that scene, I was like, is this thing about to go off?
Yeah.
And at least like I could have relaxed for that scene if I had looked up something about it. But anyways.
Okay. What do you guys say we go ahead and move into spoilers?
Yes, please.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Any other cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
So I had a question to open off with in spoilers, which probably could have been asked in non-spoilers, but hey.
Yeah, that's fine.
Here we are. Were you guys as excited as I was to potentially see John Hamm do the Macarena? And then also subsequently somewhat relieved when he didn't. Because I also don't want to see John Hamm, who is super cool, do the Macarena.
Yeah, well, I actually liked his character a lot at that point.
Me too. He was like, I'm bored. This is stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I found that really actually endearing that he didn't do it.
That he wouldn't do it?
Yeah. Because that's how I am about just maybe dancing in general, but definitely the Macarena.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, I don't want to see John Hamm do something lamer than I would do, right? And so I wouldn't do the Macarena as a grown man. So I don't really want to see John Hamm do it. I would have been like, I was genuinely worried. I was like, oh no, am I going to see Don Draper do the Macarena right now?
Wow. Clint Eastwood felt that concern that audiences would have.
I think so. Yeah. I think Clint Eastwood probably was like, no, there's no way men would want to see John Hamm do this.
Yeah.
That's the real suspense in this movie.
Yeah.
Will he do the Macarena?
Yeah. I was like, let's include all these other sweeping shots for like 10 seconds of this movie of dumb people doing the Macarena. I really did feel that Clint Eastwood as a director with his camera moves and like how much he was showing us of that was really judging the Macarena in that period of life.
Oh, dude, I was too. I was like, it was almost filmed in like the most uncomfortable way. Like, I don't understand. Like, I was personally embarrassed.
Yeah.
And I was never like a Macarena person. I didn't do it in public a whole lot. You know what I mean? It wasn't like this thing that like I was completely on board for even when it was happening. I remember it. But yeah, I think Clint Eastwood is very much being like, remember the stupid thing that people were into in the 90s?
Yeah, that's totally what I felt. Because I didn't feel that during the Kenny Rogers. You know,
no.
that had some like charm to it. And I felt like it was filmed with a little bit of love for that song. And for the people that were singing along and clapping to that one versus the Macarena. This movie has a point of view, damn it.
Yeah, the politics are real.
I guess this could have been said in non-spoilers too, but Mike, you and I discussed this a little before, but I am absolutely in love with the line, there's a bomb in Centennial Park and you have 30 minutes. I was so excited when like that scene popped up in the movie, and every time I've seen the trailer, which I feel like has been 15 to 20 times recently, because that trailer's been out for a while and I see it in front of every movie I go to see. But like,
give us your best Richard Jewell.
Oh man, I was going to ask you guys to do that.
Okay,
but I'll do it. Okay, yeah, you start it.
What was the line again?
There's a bomb in Central Park. You have 30 minutes.
No, Centennial
Park.
Oh, there's a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
Okay. There's a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
You kind of sound like Tim Blake Nelson. Looking Glass.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Chris, did you want to give it a go, or is this to me?
No, yeah, you go. I don't want them to hold this against me when the FBI gets a hold of this.
All right.
You're the actor in the group, though.
I know. You're going to do it the best. Anyways, there's a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
30 minutes, yeah. No, Chris, we're not going to get it out of you.
There's a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
Oh,
there's a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes. There's a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
Just stop.
Just stop.
There's a bomb in Centennial Park.
I think if this movie does live on in any sort of legacy, I think that line is going to be it. Like it's this year's "I'm walking here."
No,
right? Like it's going to be on those like 100 movie quotes posters alongside like Rosebud and all
like when you
other...
go into AMC theaters, it'll have it on the
it's going to
how they have all the quotes around.
Yeah, there's a bomb in Centennial Park.
In this movie, I kept feeling so frustrated for Sam Rockwell every time Richard Jewell wouldn't keep his mouth shut.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you doing, you idiot? And he's like, are there any more weird things I'm going to find out about today or whatever? And like, and then he's just like, I just want them to know that like we're law enforcement too. And I wanted Sam Rockwell to be like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, normal people don't strive to be buddies with law enforcement and like try to look at themselves in the same. That's a weird thing to do. Stop being weird.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that makes the movie so compelling. Like, I genuinely am right there with Sam Rockwell.
Yeah, so that's kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about too. So it's not shown in the movie except for like very briefly, but as a cop, he seemed like a dick, right? Like he went in there, was clueless, but he like seemed like one of those clueless guys that gets a little bit of power and uses it. Like he's pulling people over on the highway, you know, when he's not even a police officer. Like either there's something wrong with him or like, and I don't mean that in an
objectively
way.
Something wrong with him. Like,
yeah, objectively there's something wrong with him because he's pulling people over on the street. I honestly think, I mean, looking at him was probably the right thing to do. Like maybe the media shouldn't have gotten a hold of it in the way that they did. But given his history, it was valid to make him a suspect.
Well, yeah, I mean, the movie definitely tries to paint that picture. Like, Sam Rockwell even says it. He's like, right now you're not guilty of anything other than looking like the kind of guy that would do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they proceeded to have multiple scenes where, like, they really hit that nail home. That he's a weird guy. Like, he's a guy that, like, you probably, odds are, would not be friends with in real life.
Right.
But also, that doesn't necessarily make what's happening to him right, you know? And therein lies the good drama. You know, this character that like, you don't completely sympathize with and you wouldn't want to be around, but also you don't want this to happen to him, you know? So like it kind of puts you as the viewer in this moral conundrum of like, I get it, but also this is not the way to go about this, you know?
Yeah, all the stuff with Richard Jewell and Sam Rockwell, I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And it's probably beating a dead horse, but it was the other side of it, because that drama's real to me. The Richard Jewell, Sam Rockwell stuff. It was tense and it was good, but then
you catch up
twirling
with the FBI.
of mustache. Yeah.
Here's what I needed from John Hamm's character, right? Because I understand the motivation of Olivia Wilde's character, even if it is cartoonish. What I think, and maybe I'm filling in the gaps and don't need this, but I would have liked to have, I guess, known it. But I think it felt to me like he was covering his ass to make sure that Richard Jewell goes down because he screwed up by leaking it to Olivia Wilde, to like the reporter.
I definitely think that's what the movie tries to paint it as, is like him trying to like basically bag someone.
Yeah. I think I would have just liked that to been drove home a little bit more pointedly, I think, because otherwise he seems like a bad FBI detective.
Yeah, well, and that's the way that they kind of revealed that too. That was the other problem I had. The 6 minutes, that it would take to get from wherever Richard Jewell was.
The scene where Olivia Wilde goes there to like do the exact same scene, and she's like, "There's no way he could have done it," and it's like, God, you didn't do this earlier.
That feels like it's months later.
Yeah, that feels so dumb every time. Like when Sam Rockwell and them do it, I'm like, okay, he's just getting involved. He figured it out, but why did no one do this and rule him out in the first place?
And I guess they explain that sort of like John Hamm's. They don't ever show John Hamm do it, but I imagine that some FBI agent did it. But John Hamm's excuse is, well, he just had an accomplice, and that doesn't necessarily make sense because they're having him record the stuff. There's a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes. So like it didn't. I don't know. It just didn't fit.
And while we're on like the cartoonishness of the FBI, and then like it's like. It feels cartoonish in a way because at least for me, like you don't want to think that that's how an FBI government agent, law enforcement person would act. But if you've watched like Making a Murderer, right, and watched some of the tapes of like them questioning like a somewhat, mentally challenged like teenager who's just scared and doesn't know what he's doing, and the way that they manipulate him in a very similar way, it does feel a little bit more believable, like some of like their tactics and stuff.
It feels totally. Look at the West Memphis 3. Like this is not like a rare thing. Like this happens like more than we probably care to admit. Yeah,
this is one of my greatest fears for sure.
Law enforcement is just as fallible as everyone else, especially when their pride is concerned.
Yeah, and I mean,
to save face,
I'm sure
that's what's so scary. I'm sorry, Chris, but like that's what's so scary about this movie and about like all these kinds of situations is right. Like when someone has complete authority over you, and they are embarrassed and want to save face, that's a really terrifying thought.
When their job is on the line, or there's immense pressure coming from up top, at that point they're willing to sacrifice their morals and put the wrong person in jail, even if. But then at the end of this movie too, you get John Hamm, and he's like, "I still think you're guilty." So I
think it's pride. I read that as his pride. He can't bring himself to admit that he's being an ass.
Yeah.
Okay.
And would it have been more satisfying to see him like later in the movie when you get the flash forward to Sam Rockwell coming to tell him that they found the guy and he admitted it? Like, did you want to see John Hamm find that out or something?
That would have been nice for sure. I think
the thing that scared me the most about that scene was that he was a cop again. I was like, why give this guy any authority? Or like, he shouldn't be a cop. I guess it looked like he was doing desk work, so maybe that's not bad, but like, it was really scary to see him as a cop.
Yeah.
I think the thing about the third act, I wanted more from both John Hamm and Olivia Wilde's characters. And I think, like, we get the scene whenever, like, I think Olivia Wilde is like, she's watching TV and she feels bad after she's been shamed by Sam Rockwell. And it's so, like, on the nose, everything about that scene. That, like, especially the scene whenever Kathy Bates is, like, giving her speech and Olivia Wilde's, like, in the crowd,
audience.
And, like, she's moved to tears by what she's done and Kathy Bates' pain. That just felt a little too on the nose for me. Give me a scene where she goes to a bar and, like, watches Kathy Bates' thing on the news and then just gets, like, downs, like, 3 shots or something like that. Like, that will let us know she feels bad. Don't make her cry and, like, some corny redemption scene that feels false. Like, I feel like you can show her feeling bad about what she's done in a more realistic and human way that doesn't feel like a Hallmark movie.
Or have her not feel bad at all. Like, I don't think Olivia Wilde's character, like, from that change,
she needs to feel bad. Otherwise, I feel like she needs to feel bad. Otherwise, like, she's completely cartoonishly evil. But I feel like the way in which you show her feel bad is just so, like, second to third act wrapping up a script way.
Yeah, I mean,
like, have her just be a drunk, or have her just, like, show us having her live being unhappy with herself, like hating herself. Like, don't like show us her crying and being like, my God, what have I done?
I think if she had just been unremorseful and been like, hey, this is my job. I reported on what I found out. That's my job. You know, like,
right.
And I'm sorry if you got in the way.
I think
like, that would have been a thing.
Well, I think the reason they do that is to give her, because they do not treat her character well in this movie.
No.
So I think in their eyes, giving the redemption at the end is a way to like have your cake and eat it too, right? Like you can use her as a plot device to move the story forward.
Yeah, she wasn't so bad after all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she felt bad about it at the end, so I mean, you know, there's hope for her. Like it feels like that's kind of what they wanted us to think, and she would have been completely unredeemable if they hadn't.
I don't know that I agree that that's what they wanted us to think, because what I didn't feel a redemption for her. I think because the media and government is such a target in this film, I think that the movie sort of reveled in watching her feel bad.
Okay, well, maybe so.
And that's what it was like. Look at her feel bad, and like this is her punishment. You know,
well, it fell flat for me.
Yeah, I don't know that it worked that well, but I didn't necessarily feel like, oh look, she's a good person actually deep down, and like I think it was more like, look at this idiot who reported all this stuff before she actually did the payphone walk.
Yeah, could be.
But that's just like the movie's tone towards the media, the whole movie. So I didn't really feel a shift in that tone enough to make me feel any sympathetic for her.
Oh, let me be straight. I didn't feel sympathetic for her. I felt like the movie wanted me to feel sympathetic for her.
Yeah.
Either way, I don't think I don't agree that the movie wanted me to feel sympathetic for her. I think it wanted me to enjoy that she was feeling bad. Because then we have this big scene that we're supposed to really enjoy of her getting told off by Sam Rockwell.
That happens after, or that happens before she cries.
I know. That's what I mean.
Okay.
Like that. I felt the same way. Maybe it's just me, but I felt the same way about her, watching her cry and be like, yeah, you screwed up, lady.
I would agree if she didn't have the scene with John Hamm and the payphone walk, where she does the payphone walk and then she like, I think we're supposed to be like, yeah, you're stupid and you deserve this, like feeling bad. But I also think that like it's a conscious decision to make her like a reporter that sleeps her way to the top and like doesn't care and like whatever. And then at the end of the movie, she does seemingly turn a leaf. Like it seems like they did multiple scenes trying to show us that she's like trying to make up for it. I just think that like the movie also doesn't want us to forgive her. I think it's supposed to be like a futile kind of thing. I don't necessarily agree that it revels in us watching her suffer, though. I don't necessarily think that that's what Clint Eastwood wanted to do, but maybe you're right.
Maybe that's bringing Eastwood's personal politics into it too much. That I know that who he's a fan of and what side he's on and how much that side hates the media, that I guess I can't imagine him feeling any other way.
Yeah, sure.
As that's sort of the thesis of the movie, but maybe I'm bringing stuff I shouldn't into the movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I would be bummed if he tried to stick those kinds of politics into the movie. Like, I think, like, I'm all about, like, criticizing the media. The media, like, you know, everyone, no one's above criticism, right? But, like, if it's for, like, political reasons, then I hope he's trying to make, like, a non-political message here. And we can, like, everyone can agree with the fact that, like, you know, replace the media with the internet now. Like, once the media / internet / people culture start running away with something, whether they know it's true or not, often you are guilty until proven innocent, even though that's not the way it's supposed to be. And I think that's the message that I take away more than anything, which is just that like the media is going to do this because they have to. It's their nature. They're crappy, but not necessarily that like it's for ruining good, honest, working, conservative lives or anything like that, you know?
Right. Yeah. I don't take that away from the movie.
Okay, cool. I was just making sure.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I just think it's just that colors like.
That's what you're thinking about while you're watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It colors how I think that he views this reporter, even by the end of the movie, even at a point where she's realized she's wrong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think, I mean, that's what bothers me so much about them being cartoonish. You know, like if they had been characters, I would have felt better. as opposed to it just feeling like, look at the stupid media, look at the stupid FBI.
All right,
like,
yeah.
If,
I didn't even think about the FBI
like,
angle of it. Like, in today's climate, like the FBI under some scrutiny when we need them more than ever.
That scene with them in the bar where she's like, I'll sleep with you if you tell me. Or, like, that's the subtext of it. But that rubbed me, like, the wrong way. Like, it really
seemed very unsubtle.
Yeah, and it was just, like, I don't know. It didn't feel like there's a ton of setup. Olivia Wilde's attractive. They'd obviously had a past history, or at least they almost danced the Macarena
John
together.
Hamm's attractive, too.
Yeah, that's true, too. But why is any of that? I mean, I don't know. I just never really understood who those people were, and that was an issue for me.
Yeah, same thing here. But what does work in the movie is Richard Jewell, his lawyer, his family dynamics. It's the side characters, the media and the FBI that seem so cartoonish that like I feel like it does the whole movie a disservice, basically.
Yeah, it's
right.
It falls short of everything else being really good. I mean, I think you're right, Mike. When you don't really like Richard Jewell, he is a weird guy, but I really felt for him. Just because of the situation and the circumstances. And by the end of the movie, it went through like this whole ordeal with him that I ended up feeling for him. Like I actually got a little bit choked up in that last scene in the diner when he finds out he's cleared.
Oh yeah, that was really good when Sam Rockwell like moves to the other side of the booth to sit next to him.
Yeah. And even it's like he takes the bite of the hamburger and is like just chewing, and like you see him like just trying not to cry.
It was a donut.
Was it a donut?
I thought it was a burger too.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Oh, maybe I was wrong.
Oops. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's like he's been close to having a heart attack in the movie, and he's overweight and stuff, and you want him to not eat the food, but like at that point I'm like, you eat that
just
food,
eat it.
man.
Yeah, you've earned
just
it, buddy.
eat it and cry. I'm with you.
I was really conflicted with Richard Jewell's character because I wanted him to be like everything I saw that was in the movie. I was behind him, but then they because he was so innocent almost, and he just wanted to be one of the guys and be law enforcement, and even so much though that like when they're investigating him, he's willing to give them whatever, he's like, this is just what they're doing. Like I love there's a moment in the movie where he's explaining to his mom why they took like her Tupperware. He's like, they took the Tupperware to look for traces of bombs. And she's like, why are you defending them? And, why would you do that? But then, like, tied that with like all his previous stuff, and I know I'm kind of harping on this, but like you get these two people, like I felt it hard to feel bad for him. I feel bad for someone in that situation, but specifically him, I just felt like the same thing that he would do to other people if he were a cop is what was happening to him. Kind of felt like he was putting his mother through it. Sure. I felt worse for her, in that situation, but like, I don't know. Did you guys get that at all?
I don't think so, because how I feel about him as a cop is like, yes, he oversteps his bounds. Even as a security guard, he kind of oversteps his bounds. And he is kind of a dick, but they talk about him pulling people over when he's a campus security guard, pulling people over on the highway. I legitimately think that the people he's pulling over are speeding, right?
They're just speeding?
Well, I think they are legitimately, whatever he's pulling them over for, I think they legitimately did. And these college kids are drinking inside the dorm, and they're not supposed to be. And so, like, yes, he's being a dick about it, but he's not throwing his authority around just to throw it around. Like, there is a reason, like there is a law or whatever that's being broken that he adheres to. So like, he's not necessarily doing the same thing.
The movie, the movie paints him as too socially awkward to tell the difference, I think is the thing. So like, he has good intentions. He knows what cops are supposed to act like from movies and TV, and he's always dreamed of being one. And so when he's a dick to these people, like to these kids or like people speeding on the highway when he has no right to pull them over, in his brain, he's being a hero. even though he doesn't have the authority to, but it's all law enforcement, so it's just kind of like fudging the numbers. So like, he's a dick, but it comes from a place of like sheer boyish ignorance to like idealism.
Yeah, I mean,
like in the movie, I don't know the real Richard Jewell or how he was, right? Like it seems like a guy with this kind of like record in real life. I would probably feel very similar to how you are, but in the movie, it's very much portrayed as a guy who should not be a cop, absolutely not, but also not because his heart is in the wrong place, and because like.
Yeah, it's just the pulling over, like pulling, even if they were speeding, and maybe this is going too much into it, but like he shouldn't, like if he doesn't have the authority, he shouldn't be pulling people over.
Well, I don't think the movie disputes that. Like I think the movie objectively wants you to be uncomfortable with that aspect of it. Like that's why they show us those scenes. Like we're supposed to be like, ugh. But the only so that whenever he gets accused of something, you're supposed to realize like perspective.
Yeah, that's.
I mean like. Yeah, just because he's a crappy cop and a crappy security guard doesn't mean that he deserves in any way, shape, or form this. He deserves to be fired, maybe fined, maybe even arrested if he assaulted somebody, but certainly never this.
Yeah, I only wish this on the people that are actually guilty.
Right, exactly. And even then, it's just like the circus around it is almost like a toxic circle jerk more than it is anything. It's more destructive sometimes than it is helpful because it just puts unwanted pressure on the FBI, and if they didn't have the media breathing down their necks, they probably wouldn't have had to harass Richard Jewell for 88 days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like this, it's messy.
For sure.
But it's one of the things that works is like, he's not painted as like this completely innocent guy. Like there's aspects of him that are endearing, like his idealism about law enforcement, but
it's also troubling.
It's troubling and conflicting too, but he doesn't deserve it. It's like all of this mixture of emotions when the story's revolved around him, that's what really works and keeps the movie just interesting.
I agree. And I've about exhausted all my thoughts on Richard Jewell.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't have 30 more minutes in you?
I have 30 minutes. 30 minutes. I can't do it anymore. I'm too tired.
You've lost it.
I never had it. All right, so that does it for this episode.
Yeah, it does it for me. That's for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys, listeners, for listening. And then, of course, thank you, Jake Wagner-Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
All right. Stay tuned to this channel. Pretty soon, we will be resuming our Casually Criterion episodes in January with 12 Angry Men. Until then, check out our back catalog. We just recently put out an episode on... What did we do last?
The Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. And then, soon, in a few days, The Rise of Skywalker, Star Wars Episode 9. That should be out probably sooner than a regular episode, because we will be recording it slightly early.
Yeah, and we want to get that thing out before Christmas so we can enjoy the holidays.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so, cool.
If you want to send us questions or topics to discuss on Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, send those to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast, or our email, casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.